Hi guys, today we are talking about Ethereum. Will it hit $50,000 in the next 2 months or drop back to $1,000? What should we expect from the crypto market right now? Has the bull run ended or is it just a trap? Ethereum is the main altcoin in the market, and this is exactly where liquidity flows. And this process has already started. To understand it, we need to look at the Bitcoin to Ethereum ratio indicator, the main metric that shows when Ethereum and the altcoin season are about to begin. Throughout history, the indicator has never been wrong. It shows how many Ethereum you can buy for one Bitcoin. The global market maker always pumps Bitcoin first as the main asset. And then with that expensive Bitcoin, they start buying cheap Ethereum, making Ethereum expensive. And after that, liquidity begins flowing into altcoins one by one. Let's start from the very beginning. The first real altcoin season, when Ethereum exploded and altcoins went to the moon, was in 2017, when the Bitcoin to Ethereum ratio was rising. In October 2017, Bitcoin was around 4,500, while Ethereum was around $300. Which means you could buy about 20 Ethereum for one Bitcoin. Then Bitcoin started pumping, and by December it hit around $20,000, while Ethereum was $450, and that was the peak of the ratio, around 40 Ethereum per Bitcoin. After that, liquidity started moving from expensive Bitcoin into cheap Ethereum, and the ratio dropped from 40 to 10, while Ethereum's price jumped from $450 to $1,400. After a few months of trading near its highs, liquidity moved from Ethereum into altcoins, and that was the biggest alt season in crypto history. We can see on the chart that it all happened very quickly because the market had fewer participants and a smaller total capitalization. Ethereum slightly traded above its highs, then went into a descending trend and later made a massive breakout upward. And now we are seeing almost the same setup on Ethereum. If we compare it to the 2017 chart, we are now sitting right in the same phase, and this time the move could be even bigger. So what does this remind us of? Let's look at the current chart. In November 2023, one Bitcoin could buy you around 20 Ethereum. After that, Bitcoin went through a long pump, and by April 2025, one Bitcoin could buy 56 Ethereum, while Bitcoin's price reached around $80,000 and Ethereum dropped to $1,400. Then we saw the liquidity rotation from Bitcoin into Ethereum. The ratio moved from 56 down to 27 Bitcoin per Ethereum. Now Ethereum trades around $4,000, and most people think this is the top and that we are about to drop again. But if we look back at the previous bull market in 2021, we will see a very similar pattern. The Bitcoin to Ethereum ratio had been rising since 2019. In September 2019, it reached its peak. One Bitcoin could buy 60 Ethereum. Back then, Bitcoin was around $10,000 and Ethereum was only $200. After that, liquidity began to flow from Bitcoin into Ethereum. For nearly a year, the ratio stayed balanced. And by January 2021, one Bitcoin could only buy 27 Ethereum. At that time, Bitcoin was $45,000 and Ethereum was around $1,000. So Bitcoin's dominance dropped, Ethereum's dominance increased, but there still wasn't a massive price explosion yet. The real growth came during the second leg down of that ratio. That's when Ethereum went from $1,500 to $4,000 and the Bitcoin Ethereum ratio fell to 12. From that point, liquidity started rotation from Ethereum into altcoins. And that's when the alt season began. Now we are seeing the exact same setup again. The first liquidity shift from Bitcoin to Ethereum has already happened. If we look at the 2021 pattern, after this kind of drop, the market stayed sideways for about 250 days before the real bull run started. This time I don't think it will take that long. We are at the end of a 4-year cycle, and the most likely scenario is that we will move sideways for maybe another 2 months and then see the same pattern repeat. That would mean Ethereum starts pumping again. The BTC Ethereum ratio drops to around 13 BTC per Ethereum, and Ethereum's price climbs to $10,000-12,000, roughly 3x from current levels. After that, we will get the alt season, just like every previous time in this indicator's history. Of course, there is always the chance of one more flash crash to shake out the weak hands. Maybe Ethereum drops to $3,000, followed by a fast rebound and strong breakout upward. It's exactly what happened in 2017, the same descending consolidation above previous highs, and then a sharp move up. It really feels like the global market maker is using the same playbook every time, and if we look at Bitcoin's price behavior, we can clearly see the same pattern forming again. Before every major rally, the price always trades in a slow, descending range where everyone loses faith in the asset and then it suddenly breaks out. We saw it in January 2024, again in October 2024, and then in April 2025, when everyone was sure it would crash, and right after that it broke the range to the upside. With Ethereum, people have gotten used to the same pattern. Every time it reaches its highs, it can break above and just drops down again. It happened 3 times already, but this time I'm sure it's different, because every time Ethereum reached its highs before, the market sentiment was bullish. Everyone was screaming that Ethereum was going to $20,000. Now it's the opposite. Nobody believes in Ethereum anymore. Everyone's expecting it to drop back to $1,000. You might say Ethereum is already at its highs. It's up from $1,000 to $4,000. There is no room to grow. But the big player who fully controls this asset always follows the same pattern. Let's take Ethereum itself as an example. First, they pump it from the bottom, from 150 to 4,500. That 4,500 becomes the top. Then comes the correction. The price drops to 1,500, which is basically the previous all-time high from 2017. So what happens? This big player simply moves the asset into a new range. What used to be the previous highs now becomes the new lows. That's how the market works. It's a cycle. But this only works with fundamental assets that have long-term plans and backing from the big players. And the same will happen with Ethereum. The previous top at 4,500 will become the new base. The price will be moved into a new range, somewhere around $10,000, and after that, correction back to around $3,000, and so on. It's basically a pyramid with a 1K difference. The early buyers always sell too early. Those who bought Ethereum for 150 back in 2020 probably sold around $1,000 because they thought the market had peaked. The big players bought from them at $1,000 and sold later to new investors at $4,500. Then those new buyers thought they were at the top and sold, and the cycle repeats. That's how it always works. You can't just buy Ethereum at 150, hold to 5,000, and perfectly sell at the top. The hardest part in crypto isn't buying low, it's holding through the real move, when your emotions tell you to sell because you are scared to lose your unrealized profit. Right now, Ethereum is following the same pattern we saw with Bitcoin. Even if Ethereum trades sideways between 3,500, 4,500, most altcoins will still keep dropping, just like when Bitcoin went sideways in 2024 and altcoins were crashing. That's why Ethereum right now is one of the best ways to preserve capital rather than gambling on random altcoins. Because while Ethereum moves within a 20% range, altcoins can easily drop another 50%. And when that happens, it will be the perfect chance to buy those cheap altcoins using expensive Ethereum. Based on everything we have just talked about, I'm bullish on the market, especially on Ethereum and altcoins, because the final wave of growth hasn't even started yet. And you shouldn't get discouraged too early. That's exactly what the market manipulators want, to completely break your confidence. Think back to how you felt when Ethereum dropped from $4,000 to $1,000. I'm sure most of you were completely disappointed back then, thinking it would keep falling to $100. But what happened? Ethereum made a V-shaped recovery, proving everyone wrong. Right now, that same feeling of disappointment you had with Ethereum back then, the market is feeling it again, but this time with altcoins. And just like before, when everyone lost faith, the market turned around and went vertical. That's exactly what I am expecting to happen again. If you want to see my trades, farming setups, and all my airdrop strategies, check out my Twitter and Telegram channel, a link in the description. That's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.